A series of brutal murders occurs, all linked to a secret underground fight club. The investigation leads to a tangled web of revenge, betrayal, and long-buried grudges, with the final fight being far more deadly than anyone could have predicted. The sound of fists pounding against flesh echoed through the dimly lit basement, the crowd's cheers like thunder. Blood stained the floor, the only light coming from a flickering bulb overhead. This wasn't just a fight. This was survival. The men didn't fight for money, fame, or glory. They fought because they had no other choice. In the middle of the ring stood a man, bloodied and bruised, but alive. His name was Jax the Wolf Sullivan, and he was about to face his last fight. Jax had been a champion. Back when the fights were clean, when the underground world of bare-knuckle brawling still had some rules. But those days were long gone. Now it was all about who could survive, no matter the cost. The fights had gotten darker, the stakes higher, and the consequences unforgiving. A fight that used to be about proving strength and skill had transformed into something sinister. A game for the rich and ruthless. He didn't want to be there, not anymore. "You've got one more fight, Jax," came the voice of his manager, Vincent, as Jax stared at the blood-streaked floor. "One more and you're out. You get the prize money. You get the freedom you've been asking for. This is the last fight. You can walk away after this." Jax didn't believe him. Vincent had said that exact thing after every single fight. The promises were nothing more than a lie wrapped in velvet. Jax had lost count of the men who had walked into that ring only to never walk out. And now, he was next. But tonight was different. The arena was silent as the announcer's voice echoed across the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's final fight of the evening. Jax the Wolf Sullivan versus the new blood, the Beast." Jax gritted his teeth, his fists clenched. The Beast was a man whose real name was unknown, but his reputation was already feared in the underground circles. They said he was unstoppable. They said he didn't feel pain. But Jax wasn't afraid of pain anymore. He'd been through hell in that ring, and each scar, each bruise made him feel more alive than the world outside ever had. But there was one thing Jax feared above all else: losing control. He'd made a promise to himself that if he was ever pushed too far, he would walk away. Tonight, that was his only goal. The crowd's cheers grew louder as the Beast stepped into the ring. His massive frame towered over Jax, his eyes cold and emotionless. But Jax noticed something that made his heart race. A small glint of something familiar in the Beast's eyes. Fear. No one knew where the Beast had come from, but Jax had his suspicions. He had seen that glint before, in the eyes of men who were forced to do terrible things, men who had no choice but to fight for their lives, their freedom, and their survival. Suddenly, the realization hit him. The Beast wasn't just another fighter. He was a pawn, just like Jax. Someone else was pulling his strings. And whoever that was, they had more power than anyone in that room could imagine. The bell rang. The Beast lunged forward, his fists aimed for Jax's head. But Jax was ready. He sidestepped, his body moving like a well-oiled machine, his instincts taking over. The fight was brutal. Jax took hits, but he landed more. For every punch the Beast threw, Jax had an answer. But something was wrong. Jax wasn't fighting for the crowd anymore. He wasn't even fighting for himself. Something deep inside him was screaming for the truth, for answers. As the fight dragged on, Jax's mind wandered. Who was really pulling the strings in this game? Who had set up this whole fight club, turning men into gladiators for the amusement of the rich and powerful? In the heat of the battle, as Jax finally delivered a brutal punch to the Beast's jaw, he saw a flash of recognition in his opponent's eyes. A moment of vulnerability. It wasn't just a fight, it was a trap. Jax backed off, a dangerous calm taking over him. The crowd roared, but all he could hear was the pounding of his own heart. He studied the beast closely, and then the pieces clicked together. In a split second, Jax made a decision. He wasn't going to win this fight. He was going to end it. End the whole damn Fight Club. "You're not just a fighter, are you?" Jax asked, his voice low. The beast didn't answer, but his eyes flickered for just a second, betraying the truth. Jax knew exactly what was happening now. The beast was a former cop, someone who had been forced into the underground ring after being framed for a crime he didn't commit. And now, he was just like Jax, trapped in a game with no way out. But there was a way out. Jax had to make sure he was the one to walk away, alive. With a final devastating blow, Jax took down the beast. The crowd went wild, but Jax's focus was already elsewhere. He turned his back on the ring, the cheers of the spectators fading as he made his way toward the exit. But as he reached the door, the voice he feared rang out. "You think you're walking away, Jax? You think this is over?" Vincent stepped forward, his eyes cold and unfeeling. "This was never about you winning or losing. It's about control, and you just handed it back to us." Jax froze, realization dawning on him. Vincent was in on it. The Fight Club, the manipulation, the deaths. It had all been planned. He wasn't meant to escape. He was meant to die in that ring, just like every other fighter before him. But Jax wasn't done. Not yet. With a twist of his wrist, Jax pulled a knife from his belt. Vincent's eyes widened in shock, but it was too late. Jax lunged forward, silencing the voice of betrayal before it could say another word. The truth came crashing down around him. Jax wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting to destroy everything that had kept him in chains, to take back control. The Fight Club had only just begun, and now Jax was in charge. End.